I think it is officially. We are officially live! Yay! Hello, arty peoples, and welcome to another episode of Jerry's Live. My name is Emmy Klein, and I'm your host. And of course, as you can see, we have an amazing guest with us today. Jeff Olson is back on the show together with us. Yay!
Hey, glad to be here. Great to see everybody.
Yes, thank you so much for joining us. So, Jeff, as always, has an amazing show planned for us, and I'm very excited. It's going to be on some acrylics, so I know you guys have been wanting some more acrylic videos, so I'm very excited to have Jeff on this one. But today's show is JL250, so that means it's our 250th episode of Jerry's Live.
That's incredible. That is fantastic. Great job.
So, party for us. With an amazing demonstration.
Oh man, the pressure's on. The pressure's on.
You're going to have an amazing show, I know. But that does mean, though, if you guys want anything that Jeff is showing throughout the show, go to the website, jerrysartorama.com, and in the search bar, type in today's class code, which is JL250. So that'll bring up a teacher's cart with everything that he's using in the cart, so you guys can check it out that way. But without further ado, Jeff, please, let's see what you got. I know it's going to be a good show.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, thank you so much. I'm broadcasting from my studio, and you can see I'm a big acrylic fan. Lots of acrylic paints back there. So this is kind of my go-to. Always enjoy talking about acrylic paints and what you can do with them and their potential. They really are an incredibly versatile medium. So I'm looking forward to share some basics with you, and specifically today to talk about the Expert Series. So Amsterdam standard acrylics are everywhere. They are fantastic. They're like the meat and potatoes of acrylics. Everybody loves them. Everybody uses them. But I often get asked, well, what about a step up? What about the professional level? Is there something that Royal Talens makes for the professional acrylic painter? And the answer is absolutely yes. And it's the Amsterdam Expert. So I'm going to give a little bit of an overview of acrylics today. And then I'm going to share some of the specific features of the Amsterdam Expert line. And then we're going to do a demo. So I'm going to put them to the test, so to speak, and show you some of their features live. And then I'm also going to do a quick little demo using the gels. Mediums are such a wonderful part of the vocabulary of acrylic painting. They really have expanded all the different things that you can do with this amazing paint. So I wanted to make sure I could show and share some of that as well. So first of all, I've got a presentation. So let me go ahead and shift to that. You should see it on your screen here in a minute. Look good, Emmy?
It does. It does.
All right. Amsterdam Expert Acrylic. So really versatility and quality personified. So let's take a look at the agenda. I'm going to give you a quick, in the beginning, a brief history of acrylics. And I got a fun book to share with you too that I dug out of my pile of acrylic books. It's really a marvel, and I can't wait to share that with you. I'm going to talk about the quality and features of Expert. Now, in my past presentations, I don't usually spend a lot of time talking specifically about the features of a brand, but since we are distinguishing what the difference between Expert is from the Amsterdam standard, I thought it would be important to go through this list. And then the demo. I'm going to do a mass and undertone comparison, one of the quickest ways to evaluate a paint and kind of see what's going on. And then the real test of a quality paint is tinting strength. And so I'm going to mix the Expert with white and compare it to the standard and our Talens Art Creation colors, and you can see the incredible tinting strength of the Expert. And then I've got the fun exercise at the end with broken color using the gel medium. All right, so let's jump into this. So those of you who have been to or participated in some of my acrylic presentations in the past, this dapper gentleman in these glasses, you are familiar with him. His name is Otto Röhm. He was the inventor or patent holder, if you will, of the first usable acrylic polymer resin. And he patented that in the 1930s. And he created also, a man of many talents, the what we come to call now as plexiglass. And the big use for plexiglass early on was during World War II. And you can see this wonderful picture inset. I love this image of the acrylic kind of nose shield that's put on one of these B bombers, I think B-2 bombers. Just an amazing material that really revolutionized aeronautics and so many things. If we think of all the things now that are made with plexiglass that used to be made with glass, it's really an incredible amount. And that same technology, that same time of thermoplastic technology is what goes into acrylic paints. One of the first acrylic paints or early acrylic paints, you see this inset over here, this is Bucur and a paint called Magna. The earliest acrylic paints, a lot of folks don't know this, were actually not water based or water miscible. There still was a need to use a type of solvent. They actually mixed with oil paints. There's a lot of older books on acrylics, some of the earliest made books that talk about mixing oils and acrylics together. And folks look at that and goes, oh, I can do that today. Not the case today. Today we have an acrylic polymer emulsion, something very different than the original acrylic paints. So we'll talk about some of the innovations that came later. So we saw the development of the early acrylic patent. But really made them accessible to artists and created an explosion, if you will, in the use of acrylic paints overall was, again, Otto Röhm and Röhm and Haas company developed this complex called Roplex AC33. So this particular compound formed the binder of most commercial house or latex paints that we're familiar with. In the 1950s, after World War II, the housing boom in the US just exploded, and along with it, all the materials involved in that. And with the development of Roplex, it really revolutionized the commercial paint industry. And it didn't take long for manufacturers of artist materials to jump on this new technology and create acrylic polymer emulsions of their own. One of the very first is this inset here, Polytech. This is a type of paint, and I'm going to talk more about this a little bit later, that was created in Mexico City by Jose Gutierrez. An incredible paint, one of the first. Another one similar in timeline was created by Henry Levinson in Cincinnati called Liquitex. Sound familiar? And then, of course, we have Sam Golden creating Aquatech. And now, of course, we're all familiar with the Golden line of paints and acrylics. So those are some of the earliest examples. Royal Talens started manufacturing acrylic in 1970 under the Rembrandt label. Amsterdam, which started at the same year, was actually a student grade oil paint in the beginning. But since that time, Amsterdam has evolved in being our premium and premier acrylic paint line. So what about the artists? Some of the first acrylic painters actually came from Mexico. An incredible group of artists, just such huge influence on art in general, especially art in North America. Artists including Diego Rivera in the upper left-hand corner. In the center, we have David Securos, and then Jose Orozco on the far upper right-hand corner. Just giants, not only in Mexico, but in North America and worldwide. And they were some of the first artists to embrace the new acrylic paints. And part of that had to do with their interest in mural painting. Traditional techniques like fresco, traditional oil painting techniques did not lend itself well to painting big murals on exteriors of buildings. But the new acrylic paints, initially solvent-based ones, but eventually the water-based ones, were all alkali resistant, super durable, could be painted on a lot of surfaces, could be painted rapidly, covering larger areas more economically. So all sorts of reasons these artists embraced them, and they took their working methods up north to the US. They were part of the WPA Works projects, influenced a whole generation of US painters, artists like Jackson Pollock, for example, studied with Securos. Thomas Hart Benton, who's a regionalist, you may be familiar with his work. He also studied with Securos and adopted many of the techniques of the Mexican muralists in his work. Some of his most famous work, like in the Capitol building in Missouri, were done with acrylic paints, the early version of acrylic paints. So we really have this group of artists and some of the innovations that they developed in their painting techniques to thank for the growth of acrylic paint as a fine art material. The moderns, as we see later in the 20th century, as there is an interest in these new paints, we see a whole new generation of artists using them. In the upper left-hand corner here, we have artists like Helen Frankenthaler. One of her contemporaries, Morris Louis, also used acrylics. They developed a staining method where they actually put the acrylics directly on the canvas, something you couldn't do with oil paints. You had to treat, prime, prepare a good ground on your canvas before you could use oil paints to protect the surface from the corrosive nature of the binder. But with acrylics, you could go straight on. And it was because of that that they were able to develop the vocabulary that they did in these beautiful veils of color. Pop artists like James Rosenquist, who interestingly enough used to be a sign painter using some of the early alkyd forms of oils, and then also the solvent versions of acrylics and the billboards that he created, took that same vocabulary and created his wonderful paintings. Another artist of that period, Roy Lichtenstein, his image in the background, embraced the new acrylics. And it really spoke to the language of pop art, the surface of it, but its relationship to commercial art and the imagery that they were familiar with and using and mining in their work made acrylics the perfect medium. And then finally, realism, or I should say photorealism, as we see it developing in the 1970s and continue to stay. These artists like Audrey Flack, pictured here, embraced acrylics, using them in a variety of applications, not just with the brush, but also airbrush techniques using the new acrylic paints. So we see this wonderful kind of photorealist work being created with acrylics at this time. So it took a little bit to get a foothold, but today acrylics really probably are the most dominant painting medium being used today in North America. All right, so let's talk about the Amsterdam Expert specifically. So the categories I'm going to go through are very much not only something that we attribute to the expert, but what we would use to differentiate a artist grade from a student grade, for example. So 100% acrylic polymer emulsion binder. So there's no other additives to the binder. You have this pure acrylic polymer emulsion, and I'll talk more about each of these. Superior pigmentation, heavy body, so a nice, thick, rich surface that you can create. Extra fine grind. I'm going to define this a little bit more because you'll see this a lot. You see the extra fine quality here on the tube. What does that mean and how is it important, or why is it important? I'll talk about the light fast quality of these paints. Look at these little plus signs. I'm going to explain what those mean. Artist exclusive colors. So what is an artist exclusive color, and why do you find it only in professional lines of paint? And then I'm going to give you a look at the overall series and color range of the Amsterdam Expert. So first, let's talk about the binder. So I mentioned it's 100% acrylic polymer emulsion. What does that mean? Let's kind of break it down and what these three words are: acrylic, polymer, and emulsion. So first of all, acrylic. Acrylic resins are a group of thermoplastics. More specifically, polymethylacrylate is an acrylic resin used in its emulsified form, and I'll talk about emulsion here in a minute. While acrylic is plastic, not all plastics are acrylics. Another common name for acrylic is polyacrylate, which is one of the most common types used in the manufacture of paint binders. Acrylic resins offer huge advantages as a binder in paint. They provide greater resistance to moisture than traditional binders, better adhesion, absolutely the best adhesion for acrylic resins compared to things like linseed oil or gum arabic. Greater resistance to blistering or cracking. We have all been to the museum and see these wonderful oil paintings, but unfortunately many of them are scarred by cracking and the aging that the paint goes through. Acrylics are immune to that. Non-yellowing, the type of oxidation that occurs, and we see very much in the use of linseed oil binder, that yellowing over time does not occur with an acrylic binder. And then finally, I mentioned this already, they are alkali resistant. So they will stand up to the wear and tear of external use. The acids that are in the environment, that are in the air, this type of a binder is immune to those. So a lot of advantages with that. Polymer, is another word that's being used here. Real simply stated, a polymer is a large molecule composed of many repeating segments. DNA is a type of polymer, for example. They can be both natural and synthetic, and they're part of everyday life. And then finally, emulsion. I used this term up above when I talked about the acrylic resins themselves. An emulsion is a word that's derived from the Latin meaning to milk. And it comes from the fact that milk is a type of emulsion. It's a combination of fat and water. And it's held together by something called a lecithin. One part of that molecule loves water, another loves fat, and it holds those ingredients together. So when we use the term emulsion, what we're doing is adding an additional ingredient to hold two things together that typically don't want to be together. It's kind of a magic that's available in a lot of food products, for example. We see emulsifiers added to them to keep the ingredients from separating. We have emulsifiers in our body to keep all the things together as well. And then finally, a couple things on the pure acrylic polymer emulsion. Because we use one that's 100% pure, there are no VOCs, volatile organic compounds. So there's no off-gassing with acrylics where you see 100% acrylic polymer emulsion being used. So it eliminates concerns related to health, safety, air quality, odor. And our particular proprietary preparation makes the paint virtually odorless. So some acrylics that aren't 100% polymer emulsion, you can get some strong odors from them sometimes. And that's because the inclusion of these other types of ingredients used as stabilizers or extenders. With the Amsterdam Expert, you don't find that 100% acrylic polymer emulsion. So superior pigmentation. I love this picture. These are the bags of pigment as they arrive and are used in our manufacturing facility in the Netherlands. And this picture doesn't do them justice. It literally is like when you open them up that there's a light emanating from within. They just glow. And that's a testament to their quality and something that we're looking for in the pigments that we're using in the making of our paints. The Amsterdam Expert uses a very high pigment concentration. We refer to it as critical pigment volume, CPV. So we are trying, or our goal is to use the most amount of pigment that the binder will hold. Every pigment has a different surface tension and is able to bond with more or less of a particular binder. So it adjusts from color to color. But it's always at that peak level, that CPV, critical pigment volume. And only the best pigments are used in the exclusive artist colors as well. So this paint is heavy bodied. So not all acrylics are that way. The thinness or thickness of a paint does not necessarily denote the quality. It's all about how you synthesize the acrylic polymer resin. You can make them very fluid, for example. You can make them very heavy bodied. It's really about what you're trying to achieve in the paint in terms of its working properties. We have decided with the Amsterdam Expert to go for a heavy body paint, that paint that really gives you those strong impasto techniques, the kind of paint that you don't have to add a lot of ingredients to resist some of the pitfalls, if you with acrylic paints. So acrylic paints suffer from what we call a mass shift, which means acrylic paints, since they're evaporating in their drying process, they're losing moisture in the atmosphere, they can shrink sometimes and you can lose some of the edge of the brushstroke and whatnot. So using a heavy body formula allows more of the brushstroke to be retained during the drying process. So less shrinkage of the paint you'll find in this type of paint mixture.
Now, we did have one person
Sure.
pop in a quick question about, they were looking for something like a heavy acrylic that is very similar to like Bob Ross paints and oil paints that have that impasto. So this would kind of fulfill exactly what they're needing, correct?
Absolutely. And many manufacturers have heavy body versions. So Golden has a heavy body version, for example. Our Amsterdam Expert is heavy body when compared to the Amsterdam Standard. So you're going to have more of that kind of impasto feel. If you're an oil painter, for example, switching over to acrylic or looking to try it, you're going to have more familiarity working with the heavy bodied paint like an Amsterdam Expert for sure. Good question. All right, so milling. So I mentioned the term extra fine. It's on the outside of the tube. It's on several of the products that Royal Talens manufactures, including our gouache. What does that mean? So it's all about the milling process. And you can see in the background image here, an image of our triple roll mill where all the paints go through. And what we're talking about in extra fine grind is how long the paint is milled for. And for a professional paint, it can be 10 hours or more that it goes through this cycle of being fed through the mill. And if you've never seen one of these mills, imagine 3 giant rolling pins, one stacked upon another, and the paint is fed through it. And the roller pins actually crush the pigment clusters and distribute it more evenly through the paint. And it's caught in this big vat and then poured through again. And each time the gap between the rolls is reduced. You can't do it all at once. Some of the pigments are very hard and they can damage the rollers if you try to do too much too quickly. So to get the pigments ground down very finely, you have to put them through the mill a lot. And so this contributes to the cost. And so artist grade paints, not only because of how much pigment's in it, but how often or how long it's ground for can contribute to more cost there as well. But there are a lot of benefits from doing this. One is you have this really great distribution or dispersion of the pigment through the binder. By running it through the mill and spending more time on the mill, you get excellent dispersion, greater color luminosity. The other thing you get is by crushing the pigment clusters to finer and finer grinds, you get better reflective quality of the paint overall, also contributing to that better dispersion of color. If you think about it, just think of taking a fine powder and mixing it into a liquid and how well it disperses and colors, or taking a very coarse product and trying to mix it through. There are just a lot more gaps, right, through the coarser line. So you don't get that same luminosity from it. So it's kind of the same thing at work. And how we measure that are a couple of ways. Of course, we have computers that can take pictures of it and tell you exactly, but we're old-fashioned, and we use this tool in this inset. It's called the Hegman bar or a Hegman scale, and you push the paint into it, and you can see that groove in the middle. It's descending from one end to the other. So at one end, in this case, the upper left, it's completely flush, and then it gets deeper and deeper as it goes through. So the paint is put into it and then spread across it evenly. And the technician or the master paint maker actually looks at that, and where they can articulate small little particles of pigment, they line it up to where they first see those, and that's how they tell how many microns in diameter the pigment is. And they still do this by eye, which just amazes me. They send it to the lab and they are right 99.9% of the time. It's just really incredible. Some of these folks have been at this job for decades, 40 plus years for some of them. It's really wonderful to see them work. But just to give you an idea of how big a micron is, a human blood cell, a red blood cell, is 5 microns in diameter. A human hair is approximately 60 microns in diameter. And an extra fine grind grinds the pigments down to about 25 to 35 microns, depending on the binder. So that gives you an idea how finely the pigments are ground in a paint like the Amsterdam Expert. Lightfastness. So this is certainly very important for those of us who are making work that we want to sell, that we want to stand the test of time. We want those colors to remain brilliant and true over the years. So artists, as a general rule, are looking for pigments that are light fast, that have an excellent light fast quality. So you can see our little symbol that I have circled here, the plus signs. 3 plus signs equals excellent light fast quality. That's 100 plus years under museum light conditions. That's the highest rating that a pigment can have. Good or 2 plus signs for us equals 25 to 100 years. That's considered good in terms of pigment light fast rating. Fair, which is just 1 plus sign, is 10 to 25 years. A lot of student grade paints can be found in the 2 and 1 plus. And then 0. Sometimes there's just nothing in that spot. That's 0 to 10 years light fast. So that typically means that the color or the paint is not using pigment at all. It's typically, in this case, using a dye, and dyes are what we call fugitive, meaning they fade very rapidly compared to pigments overall. In the Amsterdam Expert line, you will see a domination of colors that are excellent. So they're made for the artist who's looking for their colors to stand the test of time. Exclusive colors. So I use this term a lot, and people question me, what's exclusive about them? So what's exclusive about these particular pigments is they tend only to be used in the manufacture of artist colors. They include, and you'll see I have them here circled in the Amsterdam Expert Series, the cadmiums, the cobalt, the chromium oxide green. These are what we refer to as exclusive colors. You don't see many cars painted with cad yellow lemon, for example, or homes with cobalt blue. It would cost a small fortune. Exclusive colors are expensive for a couple reasons. Sometimes they're rare in terms of their pigment origin. Sometimes the cost to manufacture or synthesize them is very high. So these are things that contribute to it. It isn't a matter of quality. A cadmium yellow lemon pigment is no better or worse than a permanent yellow medium pigment. Exclusivity has to do with the origin and the value associated with that origin, not so much the quality of it. Of course, some of you are probably out there thinking, but I love my cadmiums, and I do too. So their quality goes beyond the manufacture or production aspects of the paint. So that's what I mean by exclusive colors. And one thing I want to note is that typically you will only find true exclusive colors to their maximum pigment loads in an artist grade or professional grade paint. So when you see something that's artist grade, one way to know if it isn't labeled or there isn't a sign up for it is the inclusion of these particular types of exclusive pigments. Series. So in a student grade line, usually there's a single series, a single price point. Exclusive colors have been removed. Any colors that might cost more in manufacture have been removed, and you have a nice basic set of paints that is at the same price point. With professional series paints or professional paints in general, you'll see multiple series, and you can see here I've got it outlined where it appears on the Amsterdam Expert Tube, Series 4. Series 4 is the highest. We have 9 of those colors. I showed them. Those are the exclusive colors, so those are the most expensive. We have 31 Series 3 colors, 26 Series 2, and then Series 1, we have 4 colors. Those are closer to the whites and the blacks. Series, again, does not reflect the quality of the pigment. It's more about the exclusiveness, how expensive it is to manufacture and produce. A Series 1 color is just as good as a Series 4 color in terms of its lightfastness, its use on your palette, whether it's transparent or opaque. It's all about the exclusiveness of the pigment that relates to this series and the cost of the paint. And then finally, the color range. So this is the full color chart of the Amsterdam Expert. There are 70 colors, most commonly available in North America, in the 75 mil and 150 mil. We do some special orders of the 400 mil sometimes, and they're readily available throughout Europe. And then there are 2 sets of the Amsterdam Expert Series. Talens Art Creation, which is our student or academic line, there are 38 colors. And our Amsterdam Standard Series is actually unique. So it's better than a student grade, not as highly pigmented or finely ground as the Expert, but it is a very good quality paint. And we've grown it to 90 colors, and it includes some of our specialty pigments as well. So it's kind of a unique line. Many manufacturers go straight from student grade to artist grade, if you will, and we kind of had this kind of middle grade that really appeals to both professionals and enthusiasts alike, where the Amsterdam Expert is really geared to the professional artist. All right, so the demo. So I'm going to do a couple things today. First, I'm going to show you mass tone and undertone. So this is something you can do with any paint, not just with acrylics, to kind of evaluate and understand the colors that you're working with. Tinting strength is really the test to show you the significant difference between an artist grade paint and a student grade paint. And then I'm going to show you a fun kind of broken color exercise utilizing the gel medium. Sound good?
Yes, it does. I'm very excited to see this.
So any questions before I jump into the...
We do have a few, and I believe you're probably going to be getting to most of them while you're going through the demo. So
Yeah.
I figured I would just kind of wait to pop those in as we go.
Okay, perfect. I will switch my camera, and absolutely. So feel free to interrupt me as I'm going. So I've got a couple different things here to show you right off the bat. So we, of course, are going to be talking about the Amsterdam Expert. I have the ultramarine blue here. A couple things that are on the tube to show you. Let me get that focused for you. There we go. So you can see the different color names there, ultramarine blue in English. This 504 is our color number, our proprietary number. So 504 is the number you would find on a tube of acrylic, a tube of oil, a tube of watercolor to designate this particular pigment. This little box here that you saw on some of the tubes, this denotes the opacity or transparency. This completely empty box means that this is a transparent color. I'll show you the contrast here. This is titanium white. It's a black box. It's completely opaque. Some of the ones in between will be a line through the middle. I might have an example. Yeah, here's one. Line through the middle, half of it's black, half of it's clear. This is a semi-opaque, and I might have a semi-transparent. Yeah, here's a semi-transparent. So you see the line through the middle. This is completely transparent. That's semi-transparent. So those are the four indicators on the opacity or transparency of the paint. And then, of course, the Lightfast symbols, what I went through in the presentation, are also on the tube as well. And of course, I've got lots of paint on this tube because I use it all the time.
Yeah, I was gonna say, we can tell you guys, you definitely use this. This is not like a beauty demo. No, this is a working studio.
This is working studio demo. Yeah, yeah. I tried to find the cleanest tube that I had, and this is it. So that's the Amsterdam Expert. I also have our Amsterdam Standard. You can see again that same number, transparent. Lightfast quality is the same. Really, the difference between these two is the amount of pigment and how long it stays on the mill. So this one's ground more and has more pigment in it.
But they are both, now that because you're having them both on there, that they're both heavy body though, correct?
This is heavier body. So this is still, it's not a flat or leveling paint at all. And you'll see it as I start to use it. But this is just a little stiffer. And I like that feature of it too. I use a lot of palette knife and a lot of texture in my paintings. And so I love the consistency of the Expert, but you still get some good impasto techniques out of the Standard as well. And then finally, this is our Talens Art Creation. Again, you see that same number, same quality of pigment, just not as much milling, not as much pigment in it. Same kind of transparency. And this is our student grade paint. So I'm going to do a comparison of all these. And then finally, I have a tube of the white, and we're going to use this. This is the Amsterdam Standard. We're going to use this in our tinting comparison for the three. All right, so let's get the focus back. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put together or put a little bit of paint for each color out onto the palette here. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to leave that there. I'm going to use a actual canvas board. This is a 9x12 canvas board, just because we'll get a little more texture off this versus the palette. So I'm going to put a little bit of that ultramarine blue from the Expert, put that up there. Now this is the Standard. And then finally the Talens Art Creation. So right out of the tube, you're not going to see a lot of difference, right? The color looks pretty close to the same. And the camera lies a little bit, so makes it a little darker than it actually is, but they're virtually the same in looking at them. So now I'm going to take my palette knife here, and I want to get just a feel for what we call the mass tone. This is essentially the paint right out of the tube. And I'm going to spread it out a little bit, kind of get a look of it on the palette knife there. Spread some of this one out.
Now, it does look like your camera's a little unfocused on the paint. There it is. You got it. Perfect.
Thank you. So here we see a little bit of a difference again. Focusing on that. There we go. You can see how the tackiness of the Expert is a little more. We get a little more of the peaks, a little less in the Standard, and this one's much smoother, but still good consistency throughout. All right, there's the focus again. Now we're going to look at the undertone. So I'm going to take my palette knife and I'm going to hold it firmly against the surface and I'm going to drag the paint down. And you can see just real quickly, these two are very similar in their undertones. This one's a little bit darker, and that is testament to the amount of pigment that's in it. A couple of things that you can see in the undertone that you don't notice right away in the mass tone is a little more of the temperature of the paint. I'll get a little bit closer. You can see in some poor quality paints, and I don't have any here, but in some really poor kind of hobby paints, you'll actually see little dots that look like grains of sand. And that's the actual coarse pigments that are still visible just on the surface of the painting. You don't see that in any of these, but you get a nice clean undertone for all of them. So if this is all you did to test the colors, you might question, well, what is the significant difference here? Why am I paying more from this one to this one to this one? So I'm going to show you that next. And for that, we're going to get back to my palette. So here I had that Expert. Now I'm going to put down, not scientific, but as close as I can to the same amount of color for each one. It's pretty close. You can try this at home too with any of the paints that you're using. So I'm going to do 50-50. So I'm going to try to put in the same amount of white pretty much that I'm using with the blue. Again, it's not scientific. I'm not measuring it.
That looks about right.
That looks about right. All right, so this is the, I'm going to go ahead and get a little closer. There we go. And let's mix this first one. So this, remember, is the Talens Art Creation. So this is our student grade or academic paint. Hold that down, get that in the center. So this is a 50-50 mixture. It's not high speed, that's just me. I mix a lot of paint. So there we see a nice tint of that student grade paint. A nice ultramarine sky color. Now let's go right next to it. Remember, this is the Amsterdam Standard.
Now, we actually did have someone just jump in the questions and they made a very good point. What is the quality of the white paint you were using?
That is the standard. So that's the middle grade.
Gotcha. Would that make a huge difference? I guess because you're using the same white in all three, it won't, but.
Yeah, so just for doing this kind of a test, you want to make sure you're just using the same one. I'm doing the standard instead of the Expert because the Expert has more pigment, so it would bleach or tint out the colors more so. So I don't know if you can see the difference on the camera, but there's a slight difference in the intensity of the blue here, but they're very close, right?
Very similar, yes, but the one on the right looks slightly more.
There's a little bit bluer, yeah. And here you can see just a huge leap.
Mm-hmm. I was gonna say instant change.
Instant difference, yeah.
And even if it's not completely perfect as far as the ratios of the mixture, like it should be similar.
Yep.
It's not that far off to where this would be. Like that's crazy.
Huge difference, right?
Yeah.
So here, very similar difference. I mean, Royal Talens doesn't make a bad paint. So our student quality art creation paint is a great acrylic paint to work with. The standard is really the workhorse. You're going to get some nice mixtures out of it. But when you're using the Expert, you're going to get so much more color than you would from a traditional paint. Just a beautiful, beautiful result.
Now, talking about mixtures, and especially because you're talking about mixing the ultramarine was a transparent color. Somebody was asking, Is there anything that you can mix into a transparent color to make it more opaque without adding like a chalky whiteness to it?
Right, right. So white is the most obvious, but like you were saying, the titanium white can really take a lot of the punch out of the color. You can see it right here. The other alternative is a zinc white, or what we refer to as a mixing white. So that's a way to tint the color, make it a little bit more opaque, and not have it bleach the color out as much. And the other is just using other opaque colors besides white. So finding another color that's analogous to the color you're mixing, for example, depending on whether you want to have it be cooler or warmer. But there are combinations of colors that you can play around with to change the opacity of your paint, making it more opaque in this case, without using white as that color. Ochres are a perfect example. Grays or mixing grays, they're often an excellent color to use to add to other colors to make them more opaque without bleaching them out. So I'd recommend experimentation, but you don't always have to go to your white to do that. Try some of the other opaque colors that you have in your palette. And you may end up mixing a color that is just fantastic that you would have never imagined before. All right, so that is tinting, and it really tells the story of how much pigment and just the overall luminosity of the color there too is really wonderful. All right, let's go on. Oh, and remember I promised, I said, let me go back here. I said that I had a book that I wanted to share. I mentioned the first manufacturer of acrylic paint, one of them being in Mexico, and his name is Gutierrez. And he wrote this book along with the help of some of the Mexican muralists. Matter of fact, the preface to this book is written by Securos. This book is called Painting with Acrylics, and it was first published in 1965 at the very beginning of the acrylic phenomena, if you will. And it's so much more than just an acrylic painting book. It's not a how-to paint, still life, landscape, whatnot. It really is a deep dive and a great historical document of the beginning of this wonderful medium, spoken and written by the very artists and innovators who pioneered the material. And it's not an expensive book. I've had it for many years, but it's still available on places like Amazon for like $10 for a used copy. But just a really fun read. So if you use acrylic paints and you really would like to get more into it and kind of have an understanding of how revolutionary this was, this book does it. It actually lists all of the acrylic paints that were being commercially prepared at that time, including the ones that I showed you, like Aquatech and Polytech and Liquitex. Here's an example of that mural by Thomas Hart Benton that was done with these early acrylics. Just a really fascinating book if you want to, if you're a geek like me about artist material.
I've already written the name of that book down.
Super fun book. A lot of great history in it. All right, so now some fun techniques. So the first thing I did, and get back down here so you can see it a little better. First thing I did, I'm going to set these colors aside, was to tape off my board. I just used some of my old Pro Art tape. This is 3/4 inch, 9x12, any size, any type of tape. Blue painter's tape works too. I'm just taping off my borders. I do that because I like a nice clean edge after I do these demos to kind of exhibit the difference. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to mix some paint with the painting medium. And the medium I'm going to be using today is this right here. This is our extra heavy gel. There's a regular, a heavy, and this extra heavy. I'm going to open it up for you. You can see just how pasty this is. I mean, it's like toothpaste. It is thick. It's milky white in its fluid form, if you can call this fluid, and it dries completely clear. And that's true with most acrylic mediums. So this is the extra heavy gel. And the first thing I'm going to do is grab a color. I think I'm going to grab this fun, funky color. Now on the shopping page, Emmy, I just put the primary colors, red, yellow, and blue, just as a reference for folks. I thought it'd be fun to show some of the funkier colors as well. And these are all available at the Jerry's website too. So definitely go to the shopping page. Everybody needs the primary colors, but then when you want to really have some fun, go to the main listing and take a look at some of these other 70 colors. So this color here, if it'll focus, there we go. So this is my quinacridone rose. It's an opaque color, as you can see there. There's this color number, but we're going to use this. Hopefully it's going to focus there. There we go. All right. So we're going to put some of this paint down. And I'm going to use an equal amount, or close to it, of the modeling, or excuse me, the extra heavy gel. That's actually a good mistake for me to make because I get asked that a lot. What's the difference between a modeling paste and a gel? And the difference is opacity and their function. So modeling paste is actually a ground. It's tinted, it has calcium carbonate, it has titanium pigment in it, and it's meant to go under the paint. You can mix paint into it, but it's going to tint it like adding white. So it's meant to be a ground, where the gel medium is meant to be mixed into the paint. And when you're using an artist grade paint, it really makes a big difference. Now you saw the tinting strength of the color, so I'm going to get a little closer. With the white, now you're going to see how important that same tinting strength is when I'm adding a bunch of medium. Now you could say that I probably have a little more medium than the paint. Now just watch how this paint pigment dominates the gel medium almost immediately. For one thing, this medium is just pigment hungry. It is hungry for pigment, but there's so much pigment in this paint that it immediately gets in there and creates this wonderful, thick, heavy impasto color with still a lot of opacity, right? This was an opaque color, but I added more than 50-50, you know, a heavy amount of the gel. And you can see just based on this gray palette, how much opacity it still has in it. So what a great extender, as well as a fun medium to create some great texture, which is what we're going to do right here. So on this first half of the canvas, there we go. I'm going to go ahead and apply this paint using one of my trusty Princeton brushes. I've got a funky one here. This is a short bright. So the traditional brights may be this much longer. So this one's really stiff and it's really going to jab and create some fun textures. So I'm just going to apply this to the surface. And in the beginning, I just want to get as much coverage as I can. And look at how opaque that still is. There's some areas of transparency, but even mixing that much medium with it, we still get this great color. So I'm covering all my rectangle there. Now I'm going to go in with some of this leftover paint, and I'm going to do a little less pressure, and I'm going to create some fun kind of scumbling brush strokes. You could do this with a palette knife if you wanted. You could do it with a lot of different tools. You can see I'm changing the direction because what we're going to do next, we're going to exaggerate this surface. And this is one of the strengths of acrylic paint. This technique that we're going to do would take days in oils, and we're going to cut that down considerably.
Yeah, I did have somebody ask, this gel medium that you're using, you can use this with any of the Amsterdam acrylics in any of the series, correct?
That's correct. So we don't have a student grade mediums or auxiliaries. All of our mediums are artist grade, but they can be used with any of our acrylics and any acrylic paint for that matter. All right, let me show you some of the texture I got here. Kind of get a feel for that. There we go. Look at that wonderful texture and mark making. That gel just really creates a dynamic surface when it's added to the paint. Almost good enough to eat.
It looks like icing. I want to cut it.
All right, so now I'm going to do the other side. I'm going to do a darker value. Value is going to play an important role. And what we're doing, I'm going to use a semi-transparent color. This is our permanent blue violet. Squeeze a little bit of that out on my palette. About the same amount as I did. There we go. And I'm going to get back into my gel medium. There we go. I'm going to, again, kind of eyeball it here.
Now, what is the dry time for that when you add that medium in, like that pink side of the panel? How long would it take for that to dry?
So I'm applying it very thick. So I would recommend 24 hours before it's completely dry because of how thick I've applied the paint. Now, adding the gel medium to it all by itself does not extend or shorten the dry time. It's all about how much you apply to the surface. So if I were to extend the paint with this gel medium and then do thinner coats of it, it would dry within minutes, and it's going to tack up just like any other acrylic surface would. But because I'm doing a thick layer, you want to let it dry overnight before you do another layer over the top, if you want it to be completely dry. Now, you could go wet into wet and start painting into this right away, and that nice thick surface is going to give you the ability to paint alla prima for quite a while. So it's nice. Yeah, mainly what you're doing by adding this gel is you're extending the paint, you're increasing the viscosity of the paint, but there's no slow drying agent in it. All right, so look at that fun, beautiful blue violet.
Okay.
And I'm going to do the same thing on the other side that I did there.
Now, while you are applying that, I do have some questions, not specifically related to what exactly you're laying down, but I figured this would be a good time.
Sure, yeah.
Because you're mixing in mediums to extend the paint. What about mixing in water? Is there a point where you start losing the integrity of the paint?
So many people will state a 1-to-1 ratio as the maximum, right? That you shouldn't exceed the amount of paint with water to maintain the integrity of the binder. So if you add too much water to your acrylic paint, think of the acrylic as having all these little beads in it, and they bond through evaporation. The moisture leaves and they grab onto each other. So if you spread them out too far, they can't grab onto each other and create a cohesive paint film. So that's the reason for it. Now, that being said, a lot depends on when and how you're painting. When being where in the process is that thin layer taking place, and then how are you building layers of paint after that. So if you're doing a layer of paint in the beginning that's mostly water, let me say mostly water, and I just put a touch of paint in it, and I kind of stain or tone my canvas and wipe out and do some of those techniques with it, and then I'm painting more layers of paint over the top of it, that's totally fine, because the final layer is the one that counts the most, right? So it's okay to exceed that in lower layers of your paint. Oil painters would call that my lean layer, right? Yep. Because it doesn't have as much oil, it's got more solvent in it, it's leaner, less fat content. And then they build their painting surfaces up from there. So kind of think of it in that same way if you're mixing a lot of water. What you wouldn't want to do is put a thick layer like this and then put a real watery layer over the top of it. That watery layer is not going to bond and actually would be susceptible to literally wiping the color off at some point. So it's all about where you're applying those lean, thin layers of paint and how you're painting over it after that. But as a general rule, as a manufacturer, I will tell you 1-to-1. Artists are always breaking my rules, so that's why I have to caveat that in there.
We are meant to, right?
They are meant to. Well, and that's how we learn about a lot of what's possible, right? Manufacturer on our side, we have to take the most conservative path in talking about the volatility, the general working properties, because we have to account for all these anomalies. But artists, they don't have to be conservative. They can do whatever they want. All right, so I've applied again, another nice thick texture. You can see all those wonderful brush strokes with that wonderful color. So now we've got our textured surface using the paste. Now, magically, 24 hours have passed and I have a nice dry surface now. And you can see the brush strokes there. You can see with this too, where I painted thin, and see some of the transparency of the color, and then the thicker strokes. Same thing over here, some of those fun thick strokes of paint. There we go. A little bit thinner where some of the washes are. So that's all dry. Now, one of the great features of acrylic paint, because of its rapid dry time, is the ability to layer and build colors. And one of my favorite techniques is what we refer to as broken color. So that's where you're layering one color over another, but you're not covering it completely. You're allowing, with whatever tool you're using, be it a brush, a sponge, a palette knife, for whatever colors underneath to show through. And you can get some incredible results from this. And I'm going to show you just real simply a couple different ways to apply broken color and really magnify the surface that we've created here. So we've created this wonderful surface. It's fun all by itself. We can see some of the nuances in it, but we can also use other colors or other tints or shades of paint to exaggerate it. So I'm going to use this fun green. This is my chromium green. There we go. And I'm going to use it over this pink. This should be interesting.
And that chromium oxide, that is an opaque color, right?
Yep, super opaque color.
Most of the time, a chromium of oxide is a pretty opaque green.
Yep, yeah, and this is definitely opaque. So this is going to be a dry brush technique. So I'm getting some paint on my brush here. I'm going to kind of lightly tap my painting rag here as I'm going. And I'm just going to lightly pull my brush. I'm not going to put a lot of pressure, just enough to catch what I call the peaks of the texture. Nice, even kind of a pressure across. I'm going to go back over it, catch a little bit more. And you're probably seeing already what a cool result we get. We had that initial texture that you can see some of here. But then when I put this darker color over this lighter ground, the dark being on the peaks, the lighter in the valleys, we get this fun optical mixture of color that really exaggerates the surface that we created. And you can regulate that. So I'll start down here where I'm going to press a little firmer so I have the solid color, and I'm going to scumble too. And then I'm just going to get lighter and lighter pressure as I go out. So you can use this in fun, playful ways. So this is a dark over a light color. So let's flip that around and let's do a light over a dark ground. This is the best kind of color theory where you're actually applying colors. We can talk about where things rest or live on the color wheel all day long, but until you actually lay one color on another.
I'm so excited for this color.
So this color is intense, right?
It very much is.
It's like electric. So this is the yellowish green, such a fun color, 617. All right, so we're going to do the same thing here. I'm going to dry my brush off, get a little bit on there, tap it just a little bit. All right, and real light, I'm going to go over it again, this surface. It's like it comes alive.
Oh my gosh.
That texture
Oop,
underneath that I made with the brush.
A little blurry.
Oh.
Oh no.
There
it is. There it is. Oh.
I'm using a brush. You could use something else. I've got my little paint rag here. I could just dab a little paint onto it. And I could just lightly scumble that around in these kind of circular motions. Just catching the tops. Or I could go, aggressive with some pressure, and then scumble light. So there's variations. Just such a wonderful effect with that texture underneath. Look at how these brush strokes, it's like they were three-dimensional actuality, but now that's been exaggerated. So this is the lighter color over the darker, just putting the paint on the peaks, if you will, of the surface texture. Here's the darker over the lighter. Pull off some of these areas of tape, and we'll get a nice look at the clean edge that we've got.
It almost kind of reminds me. I'm sorry. Go ahead. I was gonna say it almost kind of reminds me, especially that purple with the that crazy, almost like Slimer green. That's what it just reminds me of.
Yeah.
It reminds me of almost like cosplay and like dragon scales, and like I really want to go paint a dragon now. Like it's so fun.
It's just so electric. I just love it. And using we're using the texture, obviously. We're using also the warmer and cooler combinations against each other, lighter and darker values. So there are different things that are at play here. But just one of the great features of the acrylic paint that allow you to do these kind of really physical surfaces and build them up in a way that gives you these kind of really fun, funky results. I know I'm kind of burning some time here, but I always love the reveal of taking the tape off.
Now, while you're taking the tape off, I did have a question for you. Is there a medium for extending the dry time?
Yes. So Amsterdam makes two. One is called a slow drying medium, and one is called a retarder. And the difference is, is how you use them. So the slow drying medium, you can add directly into the paint, and you can add any amount of it. It kind of functions simultaneously as a regular medium too. It extends the paint, makes it more transparent. Really easy to use. You can't use too much of it. You can't use too little of it. The more you put in, the longer the dry time. There we go.
Ooh, look at that. That's fun. So fun.
Isn't that fun to see that like that? Because this kind of reverse thing going on. The retarder, you use just sparingly, a few drops, and it will be more effective in slowing the dry time, but you have to be really careful how much you add. If you add too much, it will interfere with the bonding properties of the acrylic polymer. So you can only use a little bit. So the slow dry medium is carefree. I can use as much as I want, and it'll slow the drying time about 20–30%. The retarder will more effectively slow the drying time for a longer period of time, but you have to really be careful in how you use it. Moderation is definitely the key. All right, so I'm going to set this one aside. We'll look at it in comparison, but I want to really get into some funkiness with this next one. All right, so I've got another. How much time we got? We still looking good?
We are kind of technically at 6:30.
Oh, okay.
But I'm gonna let you go because it's we're still all stuck in and very excited to see what you got.
Okay, perfect. All right. Well, actually, why don't I do this? I will just show you what I did yesterday, and then we'll put the next coat on.
Oh, right. That is so fun.
Isn't this funky? So this is one color, believe it or not. So I took my funky yellow color, and I took this stencil, and you can use any stencil. Oh, wow. And I laid the stencil down. First, I did a light coating of it. Mm-hmm. Then I mixed the paint with the gel. I put the stencil in, and I took my palette knife, and I smeared the paint in over the stencil. And I created this wonderful surface dynamic, and you can kind of see here, I'll focus in on it. You can see how literally created these raised little circles on the top of that surface. For this other side, I used that dark chromium oxide green. I mixed it half and half with the modeling or the gel, and I brushed it on with my palette knife, or applied it with my palette knife. And then I took a bunch of these finishing nails and I just pressed them in. Acrylic is probably the best painting medium for collage. You can collage anything into it. And you can see how these nails are totally glued into the paint now.
That's so fun.
All right, so here we've got our stenciled image. Here we've got our collage using the nails. So the last board I showed you, we took a light dry brush and we just covered the peaks. All right, so for this next one, we're going to do the opposite. We're going to essentially glaze a color into the valleys of the paint and then wipe it off. So for this first one here, I'm going to do a dark overlight. So I'm going to take that blue violet. We're going to go over this color here. I'm going to use just a touch of it. I'm going to use the gel medium again because I want it to be even more transparent. You can see how that especially when you use a lot of it, it tints it out a little bit. It makes that violet lighter. That's the milky color of the polymer in its fluid form. As it dries, that will get darker and clear. Just a note, if people have never used acrylics before, that's a feature of all acrylic paints. Acrylic paints have a binder that's also very similar to this milky white color. And as they dry, they clear up. So it gives the impression that the colors get darker as they dry. All right, so we've got that nice glaze. I'm going to get my brush and we're going to apply some of this paint. Now this time, unlike the time before, I'm going to apply a good amount of pressure. So I'm going to take that paint and we're really going to work it into the surface.
Oh, yeah, you're scrubbing it. Love it.
So I'm really kind of forcing the paint as much as I can down into the valleys of this texture. All right, now I'm going to take my painting towel, my painting rag, or you could use a paper towel. And now I'm going to wipe and just pull some of that color back off the tops from the little dots. I'm going to get a little, actually, you know what I'm going to use? I got a little sponge here. This will be more fun. I'm going to get it just a little damp. There we go.
Oh, wow. That's fun.
I'm not going to do it consistently. I'm going to play around with it.
Okay, I know I said that the last one reminded me of dinosaurs and like dragon scales. I take it back. This one, instant. It's so much fun.
So this again, just, same principle. Instead of putting the paint over the top of it, we brushed it in and wiped it clean. And so now you can see that dark outline for each one of the little circles that's raised. You can see how the dark colors has kind of settled into it, giving us that nice contrast. But the complete opposite. Here we had just the paint on the top, and now we pushed that second layer down into the valleys versus the peaks of the texture. And we're going to do the same thing over here. I'm going to grab this delicious pink. I'm going to mix it too with some gel. Come over here a little bit so you can see. Again, quite a bit. Now this is a more opaque color, so I'm going to probably cheat. I want it to be more transparent. So I've used a lot more gel than paint in this one. So we're going to be using a color that's essentially lighter than the ground color.
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's go ahead and get our brush.
And right before you do that, if you can just touch your phone, because I think the focus is off again.
I think as I'm shaking the table, it's getting confused. There we go.
It is.
All right.
All right. That's what I'm here for.
I love it. We're teamwork.
That's right.
All right, so now we've got this pink over the green this time, and you can see it's more transparent than what I applied last time. I cover these nails, and I'm really pushing it into it again. I want it to be in the valleys of the textures that are being present here. All right, now I'm going to take my sponge again. All right, now I'm going to slowly just pull it across the top of those nails. And you can see right away I'm kind of pulling the color off of them.
That's fun.
Oh, there they are. Isn't that fun? So now we push that lighter color into the surface of the texture and then lifted it off of the peaks of the texture. And it creates this kind of wonderful effect. I mean, how tedious it would be to try to go and paint those nails individually when you can just do a couple strokes. I love how the paint built up there on one edge. I was dragging the color one way.
Mm-hmm.
And then for another, if you wanted to take it one more step, you could add some white. And add even another dimension. So we push that lighter color down into the surface.
Now, while you're doing that, I did have one last question, which is almost perfect to end the show as well, because somebody was asking about varnishing your work. There's actually a couple questions that kind of tie into it. So would you always recommend varnishing acrylics, as well as somebody was asking about simulating more of like a look of oil painting rather than that like plasticky sheen of acrylics?
Right, right. So on the protection side of it, the archival side of it, you don't really need to varnish an acrylic painting. It is a really durable surface, but in doing so, you do create an extra layer of protection. So there's nothing wrong with it, and adding a layer of varnish will add just that much more life. And the benefit of varnishes is they can be removed without damaging the underlying paint film. So if the painting was exposed to any kind of dirt or grime over the years, you can remove it, capture that luster of the original painting again, and revarnish it. One note on all varnishes, and this includes acrylic varnishes, even when they say acrylic varnishes, they do include solvents. So just be aware of that.
Very true.
So that's one part of it. The real benefit to varnishing, as some people were asking you, is really the finish quality. So depending on the type of acrylic paint you have, with the Amsterdam Expert, you can see this is dry. You get a little bit of sheen off of it. Really depends on the color, but for the most part, it's kind of a matte look to it. Some people, say, oh, it's that plasticky look. So you can apply some varnishes, some gloss varnishes, high gloss varnishes to the painting to give them, like you said, that oil painting feel if you wanted. So you can do that to preference. You can actually get some matte varnishes, which will have the opposite effect. The number one benefit to that, regardless of whether you want it to be shiny or matte, is that it will unify the surface. So you won't see any variation. So even if you're using some pigments that are a little shinier than others, this will unify the surface sheen. So that's a benefit to varnishing. All right, so I've got my brush here with that lighter color, and I'm just going to go through and I just want to hit the peaks of these nails.
Oh, how fun. It was like a little highlight.
Yep. Isn't that cool?
Now it almost looks like they're neon and just kind of floating through.
Now they're floating through. So here we've kind of done three different things. So we've got this dark ground, that texture, we put the nails into it. Then we glazed in this wonderful quinacridone rose, and that filled the valleys. And then I went back over the top with that quinacridone tinted with some white and created some highlights. And then now it just really makes those nails catapult off the surface. So collage, super wonderful to work with collage with acrylics. but how you layer and your colors after that and apply the materials can exaggerate that result even more.
Now, I believe there might be a few questions that we have not gotten to, but we are definitely out of time. Now, before we officially do sign off, though, we have, for those people who have actually made it to the end here, a little extra gift, don't we?
I just get lost. I was just having so much fun.
No, I love it. It's wonderful to watch you work. And actually, let's switch over. Here you go. You guys can see me now.
Yay.
It's great to watch you work, and like I'm so sucked in, and I'm just like, but do more. I just want to play with all of the stuff that you have your hands in. But I know if I don't stop now.
I do it all the time. I do demos with artists, and I'll just be so fascinated by the material and what they're doing with it. Time just slips away.
It does. It flies by. But we do have a little extra special things for the people that have made it to the end of the show. And hopefully they watched since the beginning, because we have a giveaway. But
yay, we have a giveaway, you guys. We have a set of the Amsterdam Expert. There are 12 of the 20 mil tubes, so a nice assortment of cool and warm primary and secondary colors, black and white, enough to get you addicted.
Definitely. So to enter the giveaway, Jeff is going to ask a question, and the question has to do with the demonstration he gave at the beginning of the show. So I'm going to actually, since we ended the show a little bit late, I'm going to give you guys until 7:30 p.m. tonight to put your answer into the chat. So just write up whatever it was, the answer to his question that he's about to ask. Make sure you do it before 7:30 p.m. So if you missed the beginning of the show, go back and check it out.
All right, everybody, you ready?
I think we are.
So there was a dapper gentleman at the very beginning of the presentation with the little glasses on. He is the inventor of the acrylic polymer that was used in the creation of plexiglass and is the primary binder for acrylic paints today. So you just have to type his name, first and last name. And
spelling, we'll give it to you in case you're not perfect on spelling, but I'll know whether or not.
It's a German name. Hint, hint.
So make sure you type in that person's name into the chats, and you'll be entered into the giveaway for this amazing set of acrylics. So like I said, until 7:30 p.m. I will let you guys put that into the chats. Make sure you type it. Also, side note, one of our viewers was like, thank God, somebody else who gets paint all over their hands too. Yay! That's great. But I will be going through and making sure to pull everyone's name that is within the giveaway. And then I will be going live later on this week to pull the names for whoever wins.
Perfect. Exciting. Good luck, everybody. And I will take some pictures of these finished boards. I'll pull the tape of it and I'll add them to the feed too.
Yes, please. If you put that in the chats, that would be awesome to see. We'll also make sure to pull those images and put them in our Jerry's Live Facebook group, which is literally Jerry's Live Facebook group. If you find it there, it's free to join. Make sure you answer that one security question, but I will make sure to post this as well, those images as well, for you guys to check out there. So that is the show. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Make sure you join me next week, because I'm going to be going over water-soluble pastel sticks, which I'm very excited about. It's going to be fun. Awesome. So that was it. And I'm already seeing like all of the, like, I have my iPad here. I'm seeing all the answers come through. So you guys better go make sure you get the right answer. You have some time. So I will see you guys next week, and thank you so much, Jeff. Thank you for joining me.
Awesome. Always great to be here. Thank you so much, Emmy. And thank you, everybody, for watching.
Thank you so much. We'll see you guys. Bye.
Bye-bye.